Hello everyone. In this video I'm going to show you how to design this tennis racket that you see over here. This is not the most nicest design. I'm not a designer, I'm a technician, but it will teach you a lot. I'm using here certain features that I've not used before, and the most interesting thing of this is that it starts with basic cylinder, and actually throughout the entire application I'm using just cylinder and plane and then a text to add a text. So it's actually all about mesh editing. So what we did over here, we created a basic cylinder, and a cylinder obviously is cylindrical, but I'm going to turn it into an oval by simply resizing the z-axis to make it to 32. So this is going to be the basic shape. But the thing here is I need this to be cut out. So there's a few ways you can do it. For this way, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to activate the polygon selection, and I'm going to select the top and bottom polygons and simply going to delete it. So we left with just the outside, but this is not solid yet. It's just a surface now because it has no thickness. So I'm going to add thickness, and I'm adding a negative thickness of 3. Okay, so what we have over here is just the basic outline. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to face selection. So you always have this top over here to activate, but you have the drop down also to choose. And now I have to go back to face selection from the drop down. If you choose from the drop down, you don't have to activate from here. You can actually activate them by switching and clicking on these options. So that's what happens over here. And now it's already activated the face. So it asks me to select these two faces. And what I'm going to do over here is interesting. So I'm going to extend that, but instead of extruding it, I'm actually going to make an incision using inset. And this comes out better over here because I just want it anyways to be this cut in a little bit over here. But once we have this incision, I no longer need to extrude, so I'm simply going to move them out. And what I did over here, I'm just kind of guesstimate about what it is. Obviously, you can make it nicer, but these flows are just kind of the idea. But this extrusion, this maintains the angle that I had before. So this had an angle, this has an angle. So I'm simply going to flatten them, and I'm just going to set the Z to 0. So this is basically just flattening it. And now what I'm going to do here is I want to scale it, but I want to scale, actually move it first, but I want to move it each one individually. So I'm going to deselect one and start working with one at a time. And then I'm just going to move the x-axis to 2 and move it like this, and deselect this and select the other one and move it to -2. So they're both symmetrical and 2 positive from this line. And the way you look positive and negative is you look at this axis over here, and in the direction of the line is positive. So you see this is the direction of the line is positive, so this was moved to positive, but this was over here, and moving it actually had to move it negative. Actually, let's see why. The x is, yes, okay, so it was negative a lot more. Okay, I got confused, negative. So actually it was negative, what, 7 something, so I moved it just -2. So that basically makes sense. And now while this is still selected, I'm moving to scale, and I'm going to scale this. So what I'm going to do here is something interesting. It actually looks incorrect now. It gets too thin over here, but I'm doing it on purpose because I'm going to do another thing later that is going to stretch it again. So it's kind of going to offset this effect. So I'm doing now the same and scaling this one to 1. Here is no negative and positive because it's an absolute value. So they're both value of 1. And I'm deselecting this. And I'm going to go to edge mode. So I'm activating edge mode. Again, you can click over here the text, or you can click on this edge. It's the same thing. And I'm selecting these two edges over here, and I'm simply going to move it out a little bit. So I'm moving this to 27. So basically now you can see the smooth stretched it back. So it's approximately good. It's not perfect. But now I'm going to select faces. And just something interesting, the edges still selected. I don't need to deselect. I've explained this in other tutorials before, that going up the ladder will not carry over. So if I have edge selected, faces considered a higher level, it will automatically deselect the edges. If the case would be the opposite, before when I had face selected and I want to select the edges, I first has to deselect, because otherwise, if I have a face selected, let's say these faces, and now if I would click on edge mode, it will automatically select all of the edges that was part of the faces. So but anyways, now I have selected these faces. I'm going to simply bridge them together to combine them. So we're going to use the bridge tool. And the bridge tool is doing it's creating this gap, but also removes the inner faces. It makes sure that it actually becomes a manifold mesh. And now once this is done, I'm going to select these two faces and I'm going to extrude that. And here's the interesting magic that I'm going to do. So my goal here is to create a pattern, and in order to do this, first I want to extrude this by just a fraction, 0.2. I could have done it what I'm going to do now, the opposite, make this 1 and the other 0.2, you'll see in a second, but I make this just 0.2, which is just a fraction. So I have this set, and then I want to make a bigger one, which is going to be 1. So what I'm going to do over here to make this pattern, I'm going to use this advanced settings to add another extrusion. I'm not adding anything else, just another extrusion, but I'm adding it now to 1. So we have two extrusions, one after the other. So one extrusion 0.2, one extrusion for 1, and I repeat this pattern 20 times. And this is going to give me exactly what I need. So this gives me here, finalizes, you see we have this pattern where this is the 0.2 and this is the 1, 0.2 and 1. This is the repeated pattern. So we create this beautiful. And now I'm just going to deselect these faces. And now I'm going to activate face mode. Actually, it's already on face mode. No, okay. So I have to click on face mode, activate them. And then click on the advanced settings. And I'm going to use loop selection. And this is interesting. So normally loop selection is you select one and then its neighbor. But that will select more faces that I want. So you can also do loop selection in SelfCAD as a range selection. So I'm selecting the range, click here, one face that I'm selecting, and then I'm going to click on this one over here. So that tells me to select entire range. But I want to select just the pattern, just the thin faces, the 0.2 faces. So I'm turning on the custom pattern and I'm using the default, leaving the default, select one, skip one. And now once the pattern is on, the next selection will automatically activate the same as the same pattern. So I click on this one and then this one, and then the same thing over here. I have to rotate the object to see it, click on this one and then over here. And now we're going to repeat the same time. I have to do it 4 times for each of the sides. And click over here. And then, oops, I have to move the object. Click over here. Now the object should have seen I had to move. Okay, to be able to see. Okay, now finalize it. So basically what I did now is I selected all of these faces. And now I'm going to extrude them again. But now instead of extruding them positive, I'm going to extrude them negative by minus 0.5. So I'm just extruding it a little bit. Minus 0.05, not by minus 0.05. Okay, so I'm extruding it by a little bit like this. What did I do? Minus, okay, minus 0.5. It was 0.5. What did I do before? I don't know what I did before. Okay, did something wrong. I don't know exactly what I did. Okay, but anyways, that's now done. So we got these cuts in. So the 0.2 I just extruded inside made this cut, and now I'm going to color it differently. Now the colors you may change, but you can later use material selection to change colors, but the main idea is to distinguish them a different material. So I color them now, and now I'm just going to deselect them. Okay, so here we have the basic shape, but now to add some roundness to it, I'm going to go to the round objects, a tool that we have used many times before, using a default as 1 and doing it. And the main interesting thing here is it rebuilt the entire mesh, adding a lot of vertices and faces, but it kept these colors, which is actually quite nice. The problem here is that these are over here. I want this to be flat, so I'm simply going to select this section, and we're going to use again the flatten tool that I used before and set the Z to 0. So now we have it flat over here. Now once this is flat, I want to add a little bit offset over here. So we're going to go to the extrusion again, and I'm going to do a side extrusion and to add more faces over here, but I'm going to make it 0.5 again. So it adds this one. Now this is not manifold now. I explained this also before in other tutorials, because this is kind of the same face is intersecting this original face. It just extends a little bit bigger, but it's also extending over here. But that's not a problem because I'm going to do 2 extrusions. When you have a case like this, you either have to do 2 extrusions or simply use the move tool later to move away the face. In my case, I'm going to apply this. I have 1 extrusion, then turning off the side extrusion and just finalizing it. So what happened is that this face that's now red asking me to be deselected, this face is actually the face that was initially here, but it got moved out. So right now you have only these faces here overlapping, so this is perfectly manifold. And that's the standard how this type of extrusion works, and I think the same works in Blender and other software. Okay, so now I'm going to add a plane. I said I used a cylinder, so we did all of this from a cylinder. Now in order to add these grid lines inside, I'm going to use a plane. And there's many different ways you can do it, but for this way, this is the easiest way to add a plane. I'm just going to rotate it by 90 degrees to make it flat, and I'm going to size it to, what did I do, 25. Why 25? I did before the cylinder was 12.5. So 12.5 radius is the same as 25 size. And now this I'm going to make a little bit shorter. I make it just 30 or 29 actually. I did it because actually it doesn't need to go over. It doesn't matter if it goes over, you see later. I'll cut out the remaining, but I just did it approximately over here. And here I'm adding segments. I'm adding 10 segments in each direction and finalizing it. So we have here a basic grid on a plane that covers the entire thing, albeit it goes out bigger than it should, but we'll take care of all of that soon. So now what I'm going to do here is, in order to keep just the edges, as I said, there's many ways you can do it. I can simply edge select, I can use follow path. I've used other tutorials, many different ways, but for this type of design, the simplest way is just using what I'm doing now. I'm just gonna go to fill settings. I'm gonna turn off fill polygons, and this automatically detects what needs to be done, 0.2, and basically what I did over here is I said, okay, add these faces that the chamfer is adding, but remove the original polygons. I could have turned off corners or edges. This is basically the edges that was added. The corners are kind of this intersection, the small boxes, but we need exactly this. And I need to enter, I guess, because it's set automatically 0.2, it didn't recognize it. Okay, so what this happens over here is that SelfCAD will automatically detect the maximum that could do in order to stay manifold. There is an option, advanced settings, a new feature, allow non-manifold. If you turn this on, it will allow you to do higher values. You can make it 1, 2, whatever, higher values at your own risk that it may become non-manifold. But this is something that's called clipping, standard on these type of tools, for mesh editing tools, that it automatically calculates the max, and by default the clipping is on. In a mesh like this, 0.2 was the max, so it says it automatically, but if you turn this on, it could be more. Okay, so we're going to finalize it. So what we have now here is we have this basic mesh, but there's no thickness. Again, it's just a surface because it was a plane initially, so there's no thickness. So we're just gonna add extrusion. Added, or I forgot. Okay, I thought it did add thickness, but same thing. Extrusion will do the same. Actually, I didn't remember. Well, I don't know why I did it extrusion, but nevertheless, that's the same idea. I think the only difference is that now I have to deselect these faces. Add thickness, I think, would have deselected automatically. I'm not sure though. But anyways, what we have now here is that I have this grid created over here, and I still need to cut them out now, and I still need to position it to be in the center of this, because this section over here moved it down a little bit. It's bigger, this end section, so the entire thing gets lifted up, so it shouldn't be below the grid. SelfCAD doesn't allow you to go below the grid, so now I'll have to move this up a little bit, and I have to cut out. So this we're going to solve over here, and we can do it quite easily. I'm going to create a cylinder with the same size we did before, actually a little bit smaller. I make it 12 instead of 12.5, and I make the height to just 2. So I don't want the grid to be fully the same thick and everything, so I'm just creating a cylinder that's approximately the same shape as before, and I still need to scale it to have the same idea, but instead of making this 32 as before, I make it 29. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to cut out. The main thing is that the cylinder should not go outside of the boundaries from this. And you see the end result. I think I actually made it a bit too big on this side, maybe some side, but you'll see later. But anyways, that we have over here is this. And now what I'm going to do, turn off the selection. I'm going to select the two objects. So I have selected now the grid plus the new solid cylinder that is filled inside, and I'm going to move it now to position it, to lift it up, as I said before, because I need to make sure this is in the center. Okay, so now they are in the center. It's actually not exactly one. It needed to be lifted up probably 0.75. I didn't pay attention to the exact positioning, but yeah, it comes out approximately okay. And now I'm going to go to stitch and scoop, and I'm going to use this function, intersection function. So what intersection function is doing, it shows you only what intersects. So this line intersected the cylinder and only where it intersected. So that why it was important the cylinder became smaller. It doesn't really matter how much the grid went out, because as long as the cylinder is inside, it's just going to show me the part that was covered with the cylinder. That's basically what the intersection is doing. And now we have this separate object over here that is a grid, and I'm going to color it just to give it a different look. And again, you can change color later. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a text. So we have the basic shape, just add the text, and we're going to go to text generator and just type in a W, a capital W, it's case sensitive, and I'm going to make the height to 5. I'm first going to rotate it so you see it makes sense. I'm rotating it -90 degrees. If you make it positive, it will become a M. So, you know, to keep it a W, it's -90. And then I'm going to position, first of all, make the depth to 1. So make it just 1. And so it starts becoming here, but I need to lift it up. See, that's now in the bottom over here. So I'm going to lift it up by 1.5. And that's basically it. So it's positioned in the center, and finalizing it and just giving it a different color. Again, I made sure it's different color so you can easily change it later. It becomes a different material. And now you just select all 3 objects and you go stitch and scoop and simply combine them. And that's basically it. So all that's left here, I'm turning it on to mesh mode, and that's it. So you see we're done with the tutorial, we designed the entire thing. So what you did over here, what you learned over here is basically we took a basic cylinder, we just gathered the outside, copied the outside faces. I mean, actually you could just copy the faces, but in my case, instead of copying the faces, I just selected the top and bottom, deleted them, so we were left with just the outside faces. I added thickness to make this into something thick, but at that case it wasn't rounded. Later we used a round object to make them rounded. Later I used this extrusion, actually inset and move, and then I bridged this section. Here I extruded with a custom pattern extrusion to give me the different things, and then I selected the custom pattern and then extruded to make the engravings and colored them. Then we extruded this side extrusion and then added the face to push it out. And then finally we added over here another cylinder, another plane to get the grid, to create the grid using a fillet with the option to remove the inside polygons. And then we used a cylinder to cut out the section using the intersection option. We added the text, we added colors, and then we simply combined everything. So this is obviously not the nicest design. You could make it looks like an old-fashioned racket, but you can design everything a lot more with these techniques. But the main idea here is to show you how simply you can design things like that, and that's the basic flow of extrusion-based modeling and these type of direct modeling. So I felt it's a good example to teach these. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and please let me know in the comments if you want me to show anything else. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.